Greetings Gatewood Gators and welcome to our March monthly bonus. We have a really fun activity in store and I can't wait to get to it. But first, let's talk a little bit about March. It is the last month of winter. Still kind of cold, you can see my breath right there, which means it's not the best time to be planting seeds out in the garden. I know everybody wants to get their hands dirty and jump into our school garden and start planting away. And that's why I thought it would be really nice to start focusing on making a little planter for inside that we can enjoy. Before I ever began to grow outdoors, I started planting succulents and sedums. They are one of my favorite things in the world because they are such long-lasting, hardy, beautiful plants, and they're so easy to propagate. Propagating is when you take a piece of a plant and end up growing a plant out of it. So instead of using a seed, I'd take a trimming and stick it into some soil or water and have roots form and grow. So we're going to be doing that with these plants so that we can enjoy a little bit of green on the inside. Now, I love recycled objects and putting a new life into something because not only is it good for the earth, but it makes things really fun and unique. So I have an old candle jar that I have washed out. Oops, still some water left in it. And I also have an old planter that I made out of a teapot. Unfortunately, the plants have died in it, so I topped it off with soil so that we can go ahead and get started. But before we do that, I'm going to show you how we plant succulents. First things first, it's a great idea to go around your neighborhood and just start plucking here and there, obviously asking permission where we can. Maybe some hens and chicks, some of these little guys, they tend to hang out on rock walls, or some sedum trimmings, just little bits. I have also collected some lichen that have fallen off the trees from my house outside, as well as some moss that was growing on some rocks nearby because I love to cover my soil with moss because it makes it more bright green and vibrant and also helps keep the moisture in so you don't have to water your succulent quite as much. Whenever you plant succulents, it's really important to think about the container. Now, I've got my recycled candle container and it does not have a hole at the bottom. There is no drainage, which means that we don't want root rot. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some rocks to the bottom in order to help with the drainage. After I have my rocks poured into the bottom, I'm going to top it with some soil. You can use cactus soil. You can use regular potting soil. Honestly, succulents are survivors. They do pretty well with whatever soil you give them. I'm going to fill it to the top and do a little tap tap. We're not cramming it down. I don't want to make it too dense, but I want to cover it up pretty nicely. And I'm going to get a chopstick or a pencil or some other object that I can use to puncture little holes into it for when I am going to plan on planting it. Now with a hen and chick succulent, this one has a little root to it. You can snap that off and still keep a little bit of that stem end. And what I like to do is I like to pick off the dead petals delicately and gently because we do not want to totally destroy and kill the plant. But I like to clean it up a little bit to get it ready for my planter. Now that I have this little stem here and my refreshed succulent, I can go ahead and make a little hole with my chopstick and stick that root right into the hole. Ta-da! Now, I like to plant my bigger plants first, my hens and chicks, before I put my little sedum bits in because I consider sedums to be a nice little accent plant. So I'm going to go ahead and put just 2 little hen and chicks. That's all you really need. Maybe 3 if you're feeling wild. Why not? Let's do it. And then I am going to go ahead and look at my sedums and see what we can do from there. There we go. All right, I've got my little hens and chicks, but I still have some space for some sedums. Here's what I'm going to do with these little sedums. I'm going to very gently take some of these little snippets out. I'm going to very gently peel off this bit and cut it out so that there is like an open stem right here. I'm going to stick a little chopstick in where I want to put it, and I'm going to put it up until that bit where the plant comes out and then nicely tap it down so that I have this nice little planting. So I always like to put about 3 sedums for every little section of my planter, or 2 if it doesn't fit. I've got another one here. This is slightly different. Gently just take off those little petals, those little green stems, and once it's bare like that, I can stick it in and plant it in the soil. Here we go, it's coming together. I just planted my hen and chicks and my sedums alongside of it as little accents. And now what I would really like to do, and this is an optional thing, if you don't have moss around or you're not feeling like this part, that's okay. I like to take little bits of moss and stick them around these areas where you see the brown soil, just to cover up all of that brown and make it a bright, vibrant green. So I take slightly moist lichen. I sometimes rip it into pieces that are a little bit more manageable, and you can kind of tuck them under your little hen and chick succulents, or just stick them inside. Sometimes it can be a little tricky getting them in. So I've got this beautiful lichen here, and now I'm going to fill the rest of it with this bright green moss that I have. Sometimes moss will have some leaves or some dead bits, but that's okay. You can go ahead and just pinch off some bits, and whatever the brown side is where those roots are forming, you just stick them right down into your planter. It's kind of like a little puzzle that you're making as you go, trying to fit all of those pieces in. And sometimes you have to take a succulent out, maybe take some moss out, rearrange it just until you have that perfect fit. This is all just about having fun and being creative and getting some greens to enjoy inside. I'm going to show you one more time just how we plant our succulents, getting out some of these roots, taking off these dead leaves, and finding a little space for them in our planter by making holes with our chopsticks here. And I have one other little hen and chick here. I'm gonna go ahead and clean that off a little bit. It has some soil already on it, so I'm just gonna make a little well for it, a little hole for it, and plant that here. And now I'm going to add my little sedums by just making a little hole here, making a little hole there, and even adding this kind of fun one. Have it dangle off the side by just making sure that I'm getting that little tip inside of the soil, making sure it's nice and firm in there so that it doesn't fall out, and that way it gives the opportunity for it to get some roots. I'm going to turn it around so you can see it dangling all pretty out here. And now I'm going to moss it up just like the last one. I'm going to take a piece of moss and put it right here where I have some empty space, and covering up some soil right here. Sometimes moss will pop out. I kind of like it when it bursts out of the planter. It adds a little bit more fun and color to it. And I'm gonna put some moss right here. I'm also gonna get my lichen that fell off some trees nearby, and put a splash of lichen in here. Ta-da! Here we go. I have my two beautiful repurposed planters, an old teapot and an old candle container, all made up. And you know what? I think it's looking pretty lush, green, and beautiful. This is just such a great gift to give yourself or someone else. You're recycling things, you're helping the planet. And if you want to get extra wild and crazy, if you have some little knickknacks lying around to give it a funky, fresh flavor, go ahead and do that. For example, I've got some like little mushrooms that I made up, and you can stick some mushrooms in, add some color to it. These mushrooms are called amanitas. You can actually find them in the woods in Washington, which is fun. You can always add some fun little jewels, or if you have any stones or crystals or just rocks and shells that you've collected from the beach, that's always a fun thing to add. Or even if you maybe have some like figurines, like a bird or a dinosaur, this could be one way that you can reuse your old toys. I have a fun little mushroom fairyland and a prehistoric Dinotopia teapot. Hey, I'm gonna keep this one inside because I need a little splash of green on my shelves, and I'm gonna keep this one outside. That's the joy of succulents, is they can do well both in or outside. They like some bright indirect light, which means maybe finding a windowsill where they can get some sunshine in, and not water them too much. Every couple weeks max. If they're outside, you don't even really have to water them because nature is doing it for you. I hope you all enjoyed some fun recycled succulent planting, and I will see you guys next month for our April monthly bonus.